Throughout the weekend, and even as we speak, delegates representing the quorum bodies, the Next Generation Leadership Initiative, as well as members of boards and conference delegations have been working to create an actionable piece of business to bring before this body. They are working with the moderators and the parliamentarians, and we will address this issue before General Synod 29 adjourns tomorrow. And second, about those clickers. You all have them with you, right? All right. Yesterday morning, several of us, moderators, folks from Synod staff, folks from the production staff here at the event, with multiple clickers in hand, walked every inch of this plenary hall testing the reception. With the adjustment of the antennas, there are no dead zones for the clickers. We also realized that several people who did vote on Friday did repeatedly get the circle with the hashtag through it and the red light. So we're going to practice this because especially this week, the UCC is not about disenfranchisement. So here's what I'm going to ask. When the moderator says voting begins now, some of you just wait a beat or two before you push your button. If, when you do push your button, you get the little circle with the red line through it and not the number of the vote that you wanted to register, push the button again. If you get that a second time, push it one more time. If after 3 tries your clicker is not responding properly, please come up here to the edge of the stage. There will be someone here that will change out your clicker for a new one. They'll also have to change your lanyard so we keep track of the numbers of clickers. But if we're going to try a vote right now, and if you get bad signal, bad signal, bad signal 3 times, then I want you to come up and change it, okay? Are you ready to try this? All right, here is the question before the House. If you think that it was too hot and humid yesterday, yes, you will vote number 1. If you do not think it was too hot and humid yesterday, you will vote number 2. If you think it was just right, please vote 3. So 1, yes, way too hot and humid. 2, no, it was not too hot or humid. 3, it was just right. Are you ready? Voting begins now. Now, if you have pushed your button and get the signal that says no vote, make sure you push it again. If you've done that again and it didn't go through, please come up and get your clicker exchanged. We're going to call a 15-second now just so that we can do that piece of it. So 15 seconds on the clock, please. Thank you. You can see that we've had 721 now folks respond. Oh, you can't see that. I can see that. Oh, it's up in the upper left-hand corner. It shows the number of responses. Just right. Holy cow. All right, so we are good to go, I believe, with the clickers. Again, if you continue to have any trouble with your clicker, we'll happily be able to change it out. Microphone 5.
Yes, Madam Moderator, Ed Higginbottom, Penn Central Conference. I see an improvement in the presentation of results from yesterday. My point of privilege and question to the floor was, could we, rather than display the bar charts as percentages, display them as total numbers of votes cast?
Because the way that we decide our votes is based on percentages, we need to know the percentage of votes cast in any particular, on any particular vote. I'm going to trust you to do the math, since you will be able to see the numbers up there. So that is my ruling on that. All righty, let's move on with our agenda. We now have the opportunity to hear from our final...
It doesn't fully satisfy, but providing that the little corner display that was on this chart is there, I think I would be happy. But yesterday there was no indication of the total number of votes cast. So how could we do the math when we didn't know the numbers?
Well, and that is why we changed it, so that you do now have the total number of votes cast. All right, moving on with the agenda. We now have the opportunity to hear from our final candidate, the Reverend Dr. Jay Bennett, who is being nominated for an additional term as Executive Minister of the Local Church Ministries and Officer of the United Church of Christ. Here to introduce Ben is Carol Williams Swope, Chair of Local Church Ministries.
On behalf of my local congregation, Trinity United Church of Christ in Concord, North Carolina, the Western North Carolina Association and the Southern Conference and the Board of Directors of Local Church Ministries, I bring greetings this beautiful California Monday morning. The Reverend Dr. Jay Bennett has served the past 2 years as the Executive Minister for Local Church Ministries after his election by General Synod 28 to fill the unexpired term of the retiring LCM Executive Minister, the Reverend Steve Sterner. Today, the LCM Board of Directors unanimously nominates Ben for his first full term as LCM Executive Minister based on the leadership, passion, and creativity he has demonstrated throughout the UCC in the almost 2 years he served at the role of Executive Minister. To gain perspective of Ben's leadership impact as he served as the Executive Minister, the LCM Executive Minister Nomination Committee, led by Reverend Susanna Davis, requested feedback from across the life and breadth of the United Church of Christ. Responses to their survey came from members of local congregations, LCM board members, conference ministers, executive council members, moderators from UCC conferences, as well as LCM staff and Ben's peers on the collegium. The glowing reviews about Ben's character made it quite easy for the committee to recommend to the LCM board that Ben be nominated for a full term. The committee shared the themes they discovered with the full board, stating that Ben was a superb leader, open, passionate, enthusiastic, and spiritually grounded. Personally, I've experienced Ben to be a strategic, collegial, curious leader who considers the impacts of his decisions on people and processes. While I find Ben possesses a profound understanding of and connection to our local congregations, he is a refreshing leader who thinks out of the box when it comes to new and innovative ways to best serve our local congregations. Ben is a gracious, thoughtful, and naturally pastoral leader, and along the journey, I've enjoyed witnessing Ben's continued passion for his beloved United Church of Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Board of Directors for Local Church Ministries, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the Reverend Dr. Jay Bennett, the Local Church Ministries Board of Directors unanimous nominee for Executive Minister for Local Church Ministries.
Delegates and visitors, colleagues and friends, it is with deep appreciation to the LCM Renominating Committee and the LCM Board of Directors that I stand before you to be considered for re-election as Executive Minister of Local Church Ministries and as an officer of the church that we all love. 2 years ago in Tampa, when I was elected to fill a 2-year unexpired term in this office, I was wide-eyed and aware of both the big challenges and great opportunities that face us as the United Church of Christ and our local churches. I spoke of the saltiness the light and leaven that the UCC distinctly offers in the marketplace of religious ideas. And these past 2 years have been a confirmation in the validity of that claim. Over the past few days at General Synod, I, along with others, have had multiple opportunities to speak to you already about programming, strategies, and initiatives emerging from the national setting that are already showing an impact and reinvigorating our understandings of what it means to be church together. Be it creative and contagious shared mission work like Mission One or the Faith In Project or Mission for One Earth, or the exemplary work of our new Mesa ministry team to bring renewed confidence to our search and call process and to revamp the ministerial profile system through better use of technology. We are doing things differently in the national setting these days, with innovation and impact being our chief concerns. We've launched the New Beginnings Congregational Assessment Tool in order to better equip congregations to make bold decisions about new directions in their ministries. And we're reinvesting again in research, making it a top priority through the creation of a new UCC Research and Data Center so that we can better measure and report back to you trends, shifts, successes, and emerging places where we see the UCC having impact. The Church Building and Loan Fund has launched 8 ambitious initiatives this year alone to better assist congregations wanting to rethink their buildings and better utilize them for mission. I could expound on each of these and list many other priority projects as well, but the point is this. In these days of significant change, both in church and society, we must do things differently, and we must earn your trust and your confidence and your financial investment as we take risks and initiate experiments to ultimately lead this church and its institutions into new frontiers for service and for growth. Rarely a day goes by that I don't consider what a great privilege it is to be able to serve in a position like this one. And I am forever grateful to you and to God for the shot that I have been afforded alongside my wonderful collegium and conference minister colleagues, seminary presidents, the incredibly talented, committed, and hardworking staff of local church ministries, its board of directors, the whole national setting, and with all of you, to help craft a future for the UCC that can be rooted in hopefulness, in growth, in innovation, in bold, inspirational goals that we can achieve together. Strengthening our faith formation ministries, equipping our authorized ministers and lay leaders with the skills and support they need, both in times of settled ministry and during times of transition, and deepening our commitment to the vitality of our local churches, giving birth and welcoming new congregations into our midst, and celebrating the engaged mission of our whole church in concert together, pursuing excellence in all that we do. It is a great blessing to be able to travel weekly, sometimes daily, across the life of this church and to see you in action. In just 2 years, I have traveled to events in 32 of our 38 conferences, sometimes on multiple occasions, visiting almost 100 local churches and every one of our seminaries, many of our colleges, constituency groups, outdoor ministries, and health and human service agencies. And I've engaged in meaningful conversations with thousands of you about what the future just might look like for us as God's quirky people in this very unique time and place and purpose as church. I have marveled and shared and posted and tweeted about you. I have teared up in pride for you because I have witnessed you at the front lines of incredible marriage equality victories, climate change witnesses, immigration battles, voters' rights protests, and workers' rights rallies. Your fingerprints are all over everything good and worthwhile that this church stands for. And I get to brag about you in ecumenical interfaith conversations. And the one thing that I want to report back to you, this General Synod, is that our church and many of our local churches are strong. We are strong. Now, don't laugh. Don't laugh. I realize I'm going to have to defend that because it is the church's fragility, not its strength, that consumes most of our talk these days, and what keeps most of us scrambling to read the next recent Diana Butler Bass or Phyllis Tickle piece that we can get our hands on. Because it's our uncertainty that keeps us awake at night. We wring our hands and we get all worked up about a future that we can't predict. Maybe it's because we once were so convinced that resurrection was something that we could manage, especially if we tried harder or we thought smarter. But we've forgotten that death is wrapped up in resurrection, and you can't have resurrection unless something is dead. And certain understandings and ways of doing things, yes, are dying all around us. But that's just making much needed room for new approaches to spring forth. Some with emerging clarity and ecclesial brilliance. And that's what I try to keep my attention on these days, as best I am able. If you look up the word strong in the dictionary, there are basically three definitions. The first has to do with old-fashioned heavy lifting. The second with doing or executing something well, like being a strong swimmer or a strong speller. But the third is the kind of strength I'm talking about, because it has to do with will, with the head and the heart. She was strong in the face of adversity. He never faltered. He remained strong to the very end. It's about resilience and determination and grace. And if those three words, resilience, determination, and grace, are any markers for strength, then I think we've got a pretty good case to make that there is still more light and truth to break forth from the United Church of Christ. It's no secret that the UCC, like other membership organizations, has witnessed significant changes in what belonging looks like and how we count heads and track attendance, or even why we do. But resilience, determination, and grace, these are much harder to quantify. How does one measure the mercy of a loving, ever-embracing God? Or how that kind of extravagant grace is made flesh and bone right here, right now, for people today, all sorts of people who need it so. It's sad to say this, but you can't just get this stuff anywhere. But every day and everywhere I turn, I see that bold example being lived out across this church, in our worship, in our preaching, in our change-making. Yet I still haven't found a way to put a number on it. But still I know the volume of our witness as the United Church of Christ is strong, and it is far from being muted or extinguished. But this is the new reality that we all must come to grips with. We are pilgrims again. We are people of yet another new religious frontier, deaconesses and deacons of an emerging church, not yet formed, no longer fully known, discovering, designing, and even delighting at times in the important and tricky work of maneuvering a Mayflower through uncharted waters and covenanting all over again that, yes, we will choose to walk together in all of God's ways. Who among us is ready to sign up for that? Massachusetts Rabbi Jeffrey Middleman struck a chord with me recently when he wrote that both religious and non-religious people both have an obsession with the wrong question, whether or not we believe in God. Because, as he says, that's really not the most helpful question, or even the ultimate one that we should be having. It never takes us to the heart of the matter. Instead, he says, these are the two questions we should be consumed with. How can we bring about more justice and kindness into the world? And how can we create more moments of deep connection? Maybe I'm a heretic, I don't know. But that's what a faith in God ultimately looks like to me. And those are the kinds of questions I see being asked and debated and lived out most fully in this church, and why it makes all the hard stuff we do worth the effort. In Alice in Wonderland, author Lewis Carroll famously penned this well-known line for Alice, you know it, "I try to believe in as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." Well, I don't completely buy that definition of belief, because I don't think belief has anything to do with believing in impossible things. I never have. I believe faith is about believing in possible things and making possible what others may dismiss as naive or unlikely or even improbable. Is this an easy time to be in the church business? No, not at all. But do people still yearn for places to speak to their hearts and their heads, make them laugh and cry in the same experience, cause their hearts to leap with joy and set their imaginations ablaze for all that's possible when people can come together to do good? Yes, I still see that happening all around us. When I was getting ready to graduate from college, after having spent most of my summers and Christmas vacation since I was 15 years old working for a local law firm, I was trying to discern whether or not I wanted to apply to go to law school myself. I talked to the senior partner of that firm, asking him if he thought there were already too many lawyers, and if so, should I reconsider and perhaps join another less crowded career field instead. My old friend and mentor responded, "The number of anything is irrelevant, because no matter what you choose to do, there will always be room for one more excellent one." Although it was divinity school and not law school where I eventually landed, that good advice is something that I have not forgotten, because the same is true for the church. And despite every attitudinal or demographic shift we can obsess over, there will always be a way, a path, a bold future for a church that is excellent. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but God gave us a spirit of power and of love. Which prompted William Sloane Coffin to add, "And this means we need not be defeated, and we won't be defeated, if instead of colluding with our fears, we have the courage of our conviction that God has more love for us than we will ever have hearts to receive." And therein lies the choice, to choose and to believe what's actually quite possible for us over that which is not. Because we are strong. For we are not our own, but we belong body and soul, both in life and in death, to our faithful Savior, Jesus Christ. In the 2nd chapter of Acts, Luke paints this beautiful worship scene where Peter, giving his testimony in front of all of his would-be converts, gets all caught up in the eloquence of his own oratory, preaching at the top of his lungs, "The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood, and everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." Oh my. And you remember, the crowd interrupts him. Yeah, but what are we to do? What are we to do? Isn't that always the question? What are we to do? And Luke says, the answer they found was this: they got busy being the bold and faithful, loving church, following in the way of Jesus, he says, devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to prayer, and to the breaking and sharing of bread. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a good, workable, doable plan to me. It's worth a try. Thank you for this opportunity and for your consideration. God bless you.
Thank you, Ben. We have now heard from all three of our candidates, and elections for officers of the National Church will be held later in this plenary. One of the constitutional responsibilities of the General Synod is to vote on the adoption of national basic support allocation, base and allocation percentages for the next biennium. This means as delegates, you will be voting on what level of our church's wider mission, or OCWM, giving will be used in the budgeting process for the national setting of the church. Before doing that, however, Kathy Houston, who serves as Chief Financial Officer for the United Church of Christ, will provide us with a historical financial snapshot and some projections of what lies ahead. Kathy.
Thank you. At a recent trustees meeting of a related organization, concern was expressed about losing sight of the legacies of the predecessor bodies as we move into what will become the United Church of Christ Board. While a genuine and respected concern, we need to remember that this same concern has been expressed throughout the rich history of the former offices, associations, societies, agencies, and instrumentalities during mergers, restructuring, and governance changes. Those legacies provide not only financial support that continues today and into the future, but also speak to the United Church of Christ's rich history of bold public witness, education, global mission, and church and leadership development. First and foremost among our legacies are the endowments and funds functioning as endowments with their related investments that are held by the Executive Council and the covenanted ministries. The audited combined financial report of the Executive Council and the covenanted ministries of the United Church of Christ includes combined investments of $276 million and $258 million as of December 31st, 2012 and 2011, respectively. These investments include the endowments that support the annual budgets, as well as endowments that are restricted for specific purposes. Approximately 38% of the 2012 revenues that supported the Executive Council and the covenanted ministries was provided by these investments. The covenanted ministries also benefit on funds held in trust by other organizations. Individuals establish trust for the benefit of our predecessor bodies and current ministries that will continue to produce income supporting the annual budgets into the future. At December 31st, 2012 and 2011, the market value of the ministry's percentage of ownership of these trusts totaled $12.6 million and $11.9 million, respectively. While small, approximately 2% of the 2012 revenue supporting the Executive Council and covenanted ministries was provided by the income from these legacies. Our church's wider mission, both basic support and special mission offerings, accounted for approximately 41% of our 2012 revenues, supporting the work of the Executive Council, the covenanted ministries, and the pension boards. Prior reports to General Synod have stated that basic support continues to decline, and this trend is expected to continue over the next several years. At this General Synod, delegates will be asked to approve a national basic support base of $6.3 million and $6 million for 2014 and 2015, which will impact the budgets for the United Church of Christ Board and the pension boards. The two charts that are currently being projected provide an overview of the revenue sources that support the four covenanted ministries and the Executive Council. Our church's wider mission, both basic and special support, as I said earlier, provided for 41% of revenue sources in 2012. This percentage is expected to decline to 38% in 2013, and the majority of this decrease is expected to be through basic support. Our church's wider mission special support is comprised of the four special mission offerings. Receipts sent to the national offices changed between years as follows. Neighbors in Need decreased by 1.1% in 2012 from 2011. One Great Hour of Sharing decreased by 9% in 2012 from 2011. Strength in the Church did experience an increase and was up 7% in 2012 compared to 2011, as well as the Christmas Fund having an increase of 4.8% between the last 2 years. The remaining revenue sources represent the following percentages of total support for the Executive Council and the covenanted ministries. And I'm not going to read these numbers. You can all read what they are provided as they are provided. Now, if you do compare the year-to-year percentages that are projected, the increase in 2013 reimbursements is due to the projected General Synod fees that we receive. It is important to emphasize that the national setting is not alone in experiencing the declines in our church's wider mission. As basic support dollars have declined, our conference partners continue to have difficult decisions about their programmatic work, staffing, and sustainability. The next chart provides a graph of total basic support at the national and conference level and the 4 special mission offerings over the 10-year period from 2003 through 2012, and clearly shows the trend that has been reported over the past several General Synods. The report that was posted online prior to the start of General Synod provided a review of the work of the Executive Council and the 4 covenanted ministries, along with an overview of how the Pension Board utilizes the Christmas Fund offering and their percentage of basic support. You've also heard the report from the Collegium that speaks to the bold, inspirational goals, the bigs, that will provide direction to the United Church of Christ Board today and into the short and long-term future. Expense reporting has been modified from prior reports to provide 3 major categories: administration, financial development, and program. In the past, staff costs, common services, and other overhead costs were reported as separate line items from program. However, staff support all 3 of the categories reflected in the chart, so we've revised the formatting to be more reflective of the overall costs of each of the categories. The online report provided detailed programs for each of the covenanted ministries. Included in the Executive Council's budget are expenses associated with General Synod, grants to ecumenical partners, the historical councils, and to groups that are part of the Council for Racial and Ethnic Ministries. Also included are the expenses related to the Executive Council board meetings and legal fees. These expenses are supported through annual allocations of our church's wider mission basic support and General Synod fees. The Office of General Ministries budget supports the work of the General Minister and President and the Ecumenical and Conference Relation Offices, along with the Associate General Minister's Office, which has day-to-day responsibility for the work of OGM, including common services. The Associate General Minister also works with staff to facilitate the work of and help plan for General Synod in cooperation with the Executive Council, the conferences, and the local church leadership. And of course, these will change at the closing gavel. Also included in the Office of General Ministries budget are expenses associated with the new Office of General Counsel, which is responsible for the wide-ranging legal issues throughout all settings of the church. The Executive Associate to the General Minister and President, who will shape the Still Speaking Leadership Institute designed to assure future leaders for our denomination who reflect and embrace our diversity and will be prepared for leadership in a changing, challenging, and creative world. The Publishing, Identity, and Communications team, which has oversight of the UCC website and other online communications, UC News and Media Relations, the Still Speaking magazine, and other Still Speaking resources and in-house creative services. The Financial Development team works in partnership with all of the covenanted ministries, inviting and receiving major gifts and planned gifts that extend the church's outreach. This team will evolve into the new Office of Philanthropy and Stewardship, which will encompass members of the current team as well as local church ministry staff currently working in areas of congregational as well as congregational mission support, our church's wider mission promotion, grants and scholarships, stewardship, and capital campaign services. Record keeping, which is done through the UCC Yearbook Office, is currently in the Office of General Ministries, and that will be evolving into a new team within local church ministries. Staff also works with our ecumenical and overseas partners, conferences and institutions of the church, and our partners within the Council for Racial Ethnic Ministries. Included in the Justice and Witness Ministries budget are staff that work for economic justice, racial justice, human rights and justice for women, global peacemaking, criminal justice, media ethics and public education, staff that advocate for health care for all, and who provide a public witness on behalf of General Synod. The budget includes program dollars that support the work of JWM, as well as grants to other organizations or agencies that share JWM's calling to provide for people of faith to gather and give common voice to specific ways of addressing the elimination of poverty, hunger, racism, classism, and sexism. Included in the budget is support for the Justice Leaders Engaging in Development Training Program and 4 centers of education and social transformation at JWM's Washington, D.C. office, Franklinton Center at Bricks in Whitakers, North Carolina, the Romero Center in San Ysidro, California, and Pilgrim Firs in Port Orchard, Washington. The budget of local church ministries includes program dollars and staffing that provide support for clergy and lay leaders, including chaplains. The Ministerial Excellence Support and Authorization Team, or MESA, helps to prepare leadership open to and prepared for ministry in the present and future church and provides for a service of vocational placement connecting congregations with persons authorized for ministry. MESA also provides support for our committees on ministry. Congregational vitality and discipleship staff strives to guide churches towards being vital places of worship, learning, and service to teach that evangelism, welcoming others, is mission. Staff works with conferences of the church to engage in new church development and revisioning of existing churches. The CVD team also provides direct support to conferences and the Center for Progressive Renewal to enhance this ministry. The publishing, as part of the Publishing Identity and Communication team, known as PIC, provides faith-based curricula and other resources that support local church leaders who educate, lead worship, and nurture faith formation, including the Still Speaking Writers Group and the Pilgrim Press. Also included in the budget of local church ministries are the net costs associated with the United Church of Christ resources, the UCC's warehouse and distribution service. Wider Church Ministries budget supports relationships with and support of partner churches and organizations in more than 70 countries around the world, responding to health, educational, community, and faith needs throughout the world. The budget includes support for work that promotes health and wholeness, coordination of volunteer services, global and mission education opportunities, with special focus on youth and young adults and leadership development. Also included in the budget is support for staff who manage funds received when food, shelter, medicine, and money are needed during times of disaster. The budget for Wider Church Ministries includes program efforts that support the work of at least 100 mission personnel serving in 5 geographic regions. The cumulative effect of declining OCWM national basic support, the lack of overall growth in OCWM special support, declining draws from investments, rising costs, and the use of unrestricted reserves has necessitated budget cuts that have included elimination of program, reduced grants, and reduction in national staff and missionaries since restructuring in 2000. It is unfortunate that the economic recovery continues to be slow and unemployment, while decreasing, is projected to remain between 6 and 7% over the next biennium. However, staff is wholly engaged in their support of the strategies that have been developed and will continue to develop that will lead to the realization of our bold and inspirational goals: to be a bold, widely known and respected public voice as a denomination, to be a welcoming community of faith that is accessible to all, to ensure every UCC person is an engaged disciple, and to support even more excellent leaders who represent the full diversity of who we are as a church. As you heard in the collegium reports, programs continue to be reviewed with the goal of efficiency and excellence as staff collaborate between and amongst themselves to support the church's core values of continuing testament, extravagant welcome, and changing lives. Faithful stewardship of our resources and care for the future viability of the national setting are high priorities. Financial challenges continue, but significant opportunities are presenting themselves as well. Thank you for the time that you have given me to provide you with this report.
Thank you, Kathy. There was a hearing last night on the budget. I hope many of you had an opportunity to attend, and in just a moment we'll get to questions from the floor, and I'll ask Kathy to stay to respond to those, but I have someone at microphone number 5.
John Dorhauer, Conference Minister for the United Church of Christ in the Southwest, and I ask for a moment of personal privilege. Last night, 19 firefighters were killed in Prescott, Arizona. A week ago, our youth were in camp in Prescott, Arizona when the wildfires broke out and spent 2 days on evacuation notice, and we were kept safe. We have a delegate from Prescott, Arizona on our delegation. We have youth from Prescott here, and they're experiencing some profound grief around all of this and questions about houses and other folk in the area. And I just invite the delegates here and our visitors to lift the firefighters and their families and our delegates up in prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And now we'll continue. If there are questions for Kathy on the budget, I invite you to proceed to any microphone and ask that the youth stewards hold those signs up high so we can see if there are questions for Kathy. Microphone number 3.
Kevin Manns from the Northern California Nevada Conference, member of the Executive Council. Kathy, 2 quick questions. In reading the draft audit report, it was clear that there were a couple of recommendations, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about how or what plans were being put in place for the inclusion of the finance process or the CFO's office in program decisions, because that was a clear recommendation from the auditors. And also, could you speak to what changes are going to be made so that our church governance process meets what would be more generally accepted best practices related to administrative costs in nonprofits?
Okay. I will do my best to answer those questions. Thank you, Kevin. With the change in governance and the change in the bylaws, my position will report through Joffrey's office, and we'll have an opportunity to meet with the collegium on a regular basis so that we can discuss changes that the collegium is considering and the financial impact of those changes. So I think that answers your first question. To the second question, best practices, thank you. Can you give I'm just going to ask, could you give a little bit more detail on that one? Because I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to in the audited report.
There is a note that reflects not necessarily a concern, but at least an identified issue, that the costs of administration for the church are above what the basic best practice standard would be for administrative costs of other nonprofits. Not that the church is exactly like any other nonprofit, but that there is a standard that under FAFSA is generally the accepted standard for what the costs should be. So what are we doing, or have plans begun to address that concern?
Okay, thank you. When we had the discussion with the auditors, it was stated that although our percentage of administration costs are high, it would be expected that the national setting of the church would have higher percentages than what the norm is for standard not-for-profits because of the overhead that those offices have to absorb. So I think as we move forward, we might be better able to define the difference between administration and fundraising and program. Currently, our basis is an allocation of our collegium members' salaries to fundraising. As we continue to evolve into the new governance structure, I think we'll be able to better fine-tune that and possibly move closer to the norm for not-for-profits.
Microphone number 1.
Hello, I'm Barbara Darling, a delegate from the Massachusetts Conference, and I was listening to your itemization of all the wonderful work of all of our ministries, all of our covenanted ministries. With regard to the justice and witness ministries, did I miss, maybe you weren't itemizing every single one, but there's still funding for environmental justice work in the JWM budget, is that correct?
Yes, there is.
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
Microphone number 3.
Meredith Jackson, Northern California Nevada Conference and Local Church Ministries Board. I'm wondering if you can say a few words about what the draw rate on our endowment is and what is acceptable or what is recommended, and how we might get to more acceptable or recommended levels.
Okay, thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.
For 2012, the average draw rate between OGM, the Office of General Ministries, Justice Witness Ministries, Local Church Ministries, and Wider Church Ministries was 7.69%. Our average budgeted draw for 2013 is 8.98%, and over a 10-year history, the average draw has been 6.96%. The new Finance and Endowment Committee will have a lot of review work that needs to be done because one of the covenanted ministries uses a different allocation base than the other 3 covenanted ministries, as well as a different time frame for averaging out their market values in order to calculate their draw rates. So the new Finance and Endowment Committee will have to review the impacts of any changes on the averaging number of the periods that we use in our calculations, as well as our base for the draw rates. And whatever we do, it will have an impact on all of the covenanted ministries and the new United Church of Christ Board administration. Typically, the average draw rate is budgeted at 5% to begin with, except for Wider Church Ministries, which uses 4% and has some different guidelines that they are following based on their policy. So we also have different policies that will need to be reviewed by the new Finance and Endowment Committee. So we will be in a state of flux over the next biennium as the Finance and Endowment Committee does their work.
Thank you, Kathy. I now call upon Jean Avison, Chair of Budget and Finance Committee of the Executive Council, who will present the actions necessary for the adoption of the National Basic Support Allocation Base and allocation percentages for the next biennium. Jean.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. On behalf of the Executive Council, I move that the General Synod adopt a National Basic Support Allocation Base of $6.3 million and $6 million for the budget years 2014 and 2015.
This action has been moved, and since it comes from the Executive Council, it requires no second. Jean, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I would like to point out that the allocation base voted for 2012 and 2013 was 7.1 and 6.8 million, respectively, per year. Actual receipts for 2012 were slightly higher than the 7.1 million budgeted for the year, coming in at 7,274,000. The 2013 budgets are based upon projection receipts of $6.4 million, indicative of a projected decrease of approximately 5%, coupled with adjusted conference retention rates. I'd like to remind folks that you have heard throughout General Synod work done in the national setting ranges from hosting and supporting General Synods to developing church-wide initiatives such as Mission One and Mission for One Earth, to the search and call process for pastors, to supporting missionaries, to justice work in the Washington office, to ongoing work in evangelism and youth ministries, as well as the historic Franklinton Center, all of which are supported through our church's wider mission. Leadership of the covenanted ministries continue to revision the programmatic life of the national setting and has been realigning staff to provide the support that our conferences and local churches are seeking. This revisioning is coupled with a new covenant of giving within the United Church of Christ that seeks to grow the funds available to the national and wider church setting.
Thank you, Jean. Is there any discussion? Seeing no one at the microphones, I assume that you are ready to vote. It has been moved that the General Synod adopt a national basic support allocation base of $6.304 million and $6.017 million for the budget years 2014 and 2015. You'll be voting 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 to abstain. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds remaining. You see the results with 94.1%. The motion is carried. Jean, I believe you have another action.
Yes, Madam Moderator. On behalf of the Executive Council, I move that the General Synod delegate the determination of the percentage allocation for our church's wider mission national basic support for the 2014-2015 biennium to the United Church of Christ Board.
This action also comes from the Executive Council, so a second is not needed. Jean, would you like to speak to this as well?
Yes, I would. Thank you. The recommended OCWM allocation percentage to each of the ministries has historically been reviewed by the Executive Council, Budget and Finance Committee, and then taken to the Executive Council for approval. Per Section 230 of the bylaws of the United Church of Christ, acting as the Budget Committee for the General Synod, the United Church of Christ Board is charged with determining allocation of funds from our church's wider mission.
Is there any discussion? Seeing no one at the microphones, are you ready to vote? It has been moved that the General Synod delegate the determination of the percentage allocation for our church's wider mission national basic support for the 2014-2015 biennium to the United Church of Christ Board. If you are in favor of the motion, you will vote 1. If you are against the motion, you will vote 2. To abstain, you will vote 3. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. The motion carries. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
We will now begin the work of our committee reports. Please note that as a rule, committees are allocated approximately 15 minutes in which to report to the General Synod. We know that a few may take a few minutes less, a few may take a few minutes more, but that's kind of what our goal is. Please remember that when you are preparing to speak in favor of the motion on the floor, you will go to the you will go to the green microphone. In favor, you go to green microphone number 1 or 3. To speak against, you will go to microphone 2. Let me start that over. If you wish to speak in favor of what is on the floor, you will go to a green microphone. They are numbered 1 and 2. If you wish to speak against the motion on the floor, you will go to a red microphone. They are numbered 3 and 4. Points of personal privilege are for the yellow microphone number 5. White is for any amendments or other procedural motions. Anytime you come to the microphone, please remember to state your name, your home conference, and face this way so that the cameras can pick you up. Also, as we go about our business over the next couple of days, we will not be of a common mind. And so I encourage you to remember that during debate and at the conclusion of votes, there will be no applause, no cheers, and no groaning. Thank you very much. Get it out of your systems now. This is the last time. And silence your cell phones now. Microphone 5.
Madam Moderator, I'm sorry, but an age issue is coming on me, and so I.
Could you please state your name and your conference?
Bill Sterrett, Rhode Island, and Executive Council, and sight impaired is those numbers are small at the top. So after votes, would you just read the number of people who voted for us just when it happens?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. With all of these instructions in mind, I want to thank our committee process facilitators, Ron Mosley from the Northern California-Nevada Conference, Dennis Frisch-Murray from the Indiana-Kentucky Conference, Susan Townsley from the Connecticut Conference. The team is staffed by David Anderson of the Pacific Northwest Conference. Dennis is not feeling well and is not with us today, but I invite these folks, wherever you are, to please stand so we can thank you for your hard work. They, with the conference chairs, had a long day yesterday, and we are grateful to them. The first committee to report out will be committee number 1. They were tasked with working on calling for the United Church of Christ to repudiate the doctrine of discovery, which authorized the genocide of Indian people and the theft of Indian lands. This is a resolution of witness. It will require a 2/3 vote. This is the only piece of business which this committee is bringing to the Synod. I call on the chairperson, Brian Burke.
Good morning. I am Brian Burke of the Ohio Conference. I'm pastor of First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Wellington, Ohio, and I bring you greetings from this rowdy bunch right in front, even as we look forward to hosting you in 2 years at the 30th General Synod. Committee number 1 was tasked with bringing you a recommendation on the resolution now before us. Our committee immersed itself in the topic and to a person was in enthusiastic support of the resolution. Of course, in true UCC fashion, the devil was in the details. So if you would turn in your resolution packet that was on your table and turn to page 2, this will lead us through what the resolution is that the committee brings to you. The differences are few, but to the committee, these are important changes. Lines 1005 through 1010 were originally one paragraph. The committee chose to break it into two paragraphs to give stronger emphasis to the statement of repudiation in lines 1005 and 1006, and to expand the statements of shame in 1008 and following. With the extravagant welcome and radical hospitality of the Came authors, the paragraph beginning with line 1012 was expanded to include the native peoples of all 50 states where this doctrine has had its effect, and to clarify that it is not only land, but also the land's resources, such as mineral rights, that are no longer owned by the land's original owners. The paragraph beginning with line 1017 suggests that Justice and Witness Ministries and Came broaden the table to include other ministries that might have an interest because of their histories. And with this expansion of peoples referenced in the resolution, the committee felt that the title needed to be changed to reflect that broader scope. And there were two editorial changes in lines 1018 and 1033. And so with those brief explanations, which I shall explain further in a moment, on behalf of Committee Number 1, I move that the 29th General Synod adopts the resolution newly entitled, Calling for the United Church of Christ to Repudiate the Doctrine of Discovery, which authorized the genocide of native peoples and the theft of native lands, and recommends approval as presented.
Thank you. This is now the main motion on the floor. Would you like to speak to it, Brian? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Verse 3 from the Habakkuk theme of General Synod reminds us that the time for the message to come true is coming soon. It may seem like a long time, but be patient and wait for it, because it will surely come. Many people have been patiently waiting for their time, especially Native Americans from all 50 states who were displaced from their homelands because of the doctrine of discovery. In its educational intensive, the committee was treated to a thorough historical background in both the doctrine of discovery, first stated over 900 years ago by the Church, and the Marshall Trilogy, 3 Supreme Court decisions that upheld the doctrine as the law of the land. An abbreviated version comprises the first 100 lines of the resolution. The proponents brought forth this resolution to put the United Church of Christ on record as repudiating this doctrine, to recommend that the UCC join ecumenical partners in exploring ways to compensate Indians for the land stolen under this doctrine, to request educational materials for our local churches, as well as substantive study materials to be presented to the 30th General Synod in 2 years, and to have the UCC call upon our government to also repudiate the doctrine of discovery. The committee felt it critical to specifically acknowledge 4 additional points in the final resolution. First, that damages to Native Americans were more extensive than just a land grab, as the valuable rights to minerals and other resources of the land were and are continuing to be denied them. Second, that although this resolution addresses specific actions of the past, the doctrine of discovery continues to affect people and lands on an ongoing basis. Third, that this doctrine has affected populations of native peoples beyond just American Indians. And finally, that upon theological reflection, that there needed to be a statement of confession and repentance incorporated. The final document before you reflects these concerns of the committee, with the concurrence and extravagant welcome of the Came representatives that were in attendance with us. American Indians, Alaskan Natives, and Native Hawaiians have patiently waited and are still patiently waiting. Committee 1 hopes this resolution will take steps toward rewarding their patience.
Thank you, Brian. Microphone 2. No applause, please.
I'm David Felton. I'm the interim conference minister for the United Church of Christ in South Dakota. Our conference at our annual meeting in June voted unanimously to support the Dakota Association, CAIM, and Justice and Witness Ministries in this important rejection, repudiation. Someone on the bus on the way over said, well, yeah, this is nice history, but what's it have to do with us today? It continues, as you were saying, it continues today and continues in our life. In the 19th and 20th centuries, our church was a part of this mixture of state and church together that's been unholy and ungodly in the past, in what was known as the boarding schools, which were the government took the children out of the native homes and sent them to school where they were taught or not allowed to speak their native languages or practice any of their customs. This included the Roman Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church, and us. We were a part of that. One of our missionaries explained in the 19th century, we are doing the same ministry, or the same work as Custer. He uses bullets, we use the Bible. We need to join with the Episcopal Church and the Methodist bishops in repudiating this abomination.
Microphone 2.
My name is Enno Limveer from the South Dakota Conference. Over the past few years in the South Dakota Conference, we have been conducting our version of the Sacred Conversation on Race. And it has been between our local churches and the churches on the reservations in South Dakota. And it has produced many fruits, and some of this is because of the resolution that came out of it, and also is that the 13 churches that are on the reservation have their property owned by the conference. We are in the process of returning local ownership to the local churches. But so the people asked well, what does that have to do with today? Well, how would you like your local church property to be owned by the conference? So there is a lot of work yet to do, and this is part of the compensation of returning what was rightfully theirs that is still within our. So I ask you that you please vote in favor of this resolution.
Microphone 3.
My name is Richard Steele. I'm from the Wisconsin Conference. I have no problem with many of the issues that have been brought up with regard to how the Native Americans, so-called Native Americans, were treated. The issue that I have is that I am a Native American. I was born in the United States. To me, that means I'm a Native American. I know there are others that feel that way too. The people that you're calling Native Americans came here across an isthmus, as I understand it, from Asia to Alaska and down into what's now the North America and the United States. I feel that I'm as much a Native American as they are. I came later. I don't feel that we stole their lands. They came here and took over a land that was not theirs any more than it's ours. So anyway, I just put that forward to you to consider. We're all immigrants from somewhere else. I don't know where it all started with Adam and Eve, but we're all immigrants to this country. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
I'm Roseanne Dice Anderson, the South Dakota representative on the Justice and Witness Ministries Board. When this resolution began in the process last fall and brought to a group of clergy in the South Dakota Conference, we met with the Dakota Association as we began to draft this resolution. In the process from going to those sacred conversations, we went from there and asked for a vote from the Justice and Witness Ministry Board. That vote to add their name to this resolution was 100%. When it went to the South Dakota Conference at our annual meeting in early June, we asked for a 100% vote for this resolution, and we got it. I'm asking you people to consider this resolution and what we have done to our Native people, whether it's the Native Americans or Alaskans or Hawaiians, and ask for a 100% delegate vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Microphone 1.
Histe, Caitlin Ihojifkados, Oklahoma Chimlegados.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Lumley, and I'm from the Kansas-Oklahoma Conference.
Adrian Maxi Chahajifkados, Muskogee Omes, Oklahoma City Amidowados.
This is Adrian Maxey. He is in Muskogee Creek, and he lives in Oklahoma City.
Shochke Los Mali Macombs Maxi Kiafkawadidis, Owithkados, Muskogee Obanaga Mahayas.
Many of you know his mom, Rosemary. She is not here. She is teaching the Creek language.
Huithas Onaeda, Isticharit Ohisco, Samich Kodos. Isticharit Ohisi Omikodos, Hisagidamasi Leges, Manga discovered Omigodos.
I stand here to say the Native people were never lost. They aren't lost now. They are exactly where the Creator put them. Therefore, they can't be discovered.
Hisagidamasi Istin Pokithes, Istit Hisagidamasin Mokithakis, Istit Akada Mahemwados.
They already know the Creator, and the Creator knows them. This is true for all people.
Maro.
Thank you.
No applause, please. Microphone 5.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Christopher Jenkins, Massachusetts Conference, and I just have a point of clarification, a question. I'm wondering if somebody, either the presenter or a future speaker, can elaborate on the compensation issue. What might examples be of how that would play out? Thank you.
Thank you. Before I recognize microphone 2, I would note that there's no one at a red microphone, and so if you have something substantially different to bring to the conversation, we welcome that, but we'd also want to encourage us to move our business along in a timely manner. Microphone 2.
I'm Jim Mose, Executive Minister of Wider Church Ministries and Co-Executive of Global Ministries. I'm pleased to speak in support of this resolution and to commit Wider Church Ministries to its implementation. And I hope a dimension of that implementation will be a broader church discussion of our mission history, which would include both those dimensions of it from which we need further repentance and those dimensions which we can mutually affirm. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
I'm Alitha Ka'ohi. I'm from Hawaii Conference. I speak in support of the resolution. 20 years ago, this General Synod apologized and sent a representative to Hawaii to apologize to the Native Hawaiians. I ask you again to stand tall like warriors, for in Hawaii, one of the things is not only land, but our water rights to our taro fields, which is the sustainable and food for our Native Hawaiians. So please support this resolution.
We have reached the end of our allotted time. Are you feeling that you're ready to vote? All right. The motion before you is, Brian, would you restate that? Well, I'll take it. The motion before you is calling the United Church of Christ to repudiate the doctrine of discovery which authorized the genocide of native peoples and the theft of native lands, and the recommendation is to vote yes. So if you are in favor of this resolution, you will be voting 1. If you are opposed to it, you will be voting 2. If you wish to abstain, you will vote 3. Voting begins now. I know, it took me 5 times pushing before mine registered. 15 seconds. Five seconds. Voting is now closed with a total number of 794 votes cast. The motion passes. No applause, please. The next, microphone 5.
Julia Swain, Northern California, Nevada Conference. I'll say that again. Julia Swain, Northern California, Nevada Conference. I have a point of order question. Would it be possible for you to announce the order of the resolutions as you know it at this point and continue to do that as we have breaks and you decide the order more?
This will be our last resolution before a short break. At the beginning of the next resolution, we will tell you what we expect to be up on the docket for the rest of the morning and into the afternoon.
Thank you.
The next committee to report is committee number 13. I call upon Barbara Ferguson Camara of that committee to bring this to us. This is the first of only one item of business that they are bringing to us, and this is a resolution of witness which will require a 2/3 vote. Barbara.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I am Barbara Ferguson Camara, lay delegate from the Central Atlantic Conference and a member of Faith United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C. Sincere thanks and appreciation are extended to the entire Committee 13, our Executive Council liaison, our Justice and Witness staff expert, the committee process team, and the experts who provided background and clarifying information regarding the content of this resolution. The resolution, as it came out of our committee, can be found in the resolution packet on pages 11 and 12. While the copy in front of you makes it appear that we struck out 2 whereases, we did not. They were simply moved from the therefore be it resolved section up to the background information section. Our committee did add a sentence urging the stopping of construction of the southern border fence and limiting additional immigration border patrol agents on the southern border. On behalf of Committee 13, I move that the 29th General Synod adopts a resolution supporting compassionate, comprehensive immigration reform and the protection of the human rights of immigrants, and Committee 13 unanimously recommends approval.
Thank you, Barbara. This motion is now on the floor. The committee has recommended that you speak to it, Barbara, or that you approve it. Barbara, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you. From the beginning of our work, it was clear that the committee members supported this resolution. There was a lively, informative discussion about the fact that we are all immigrant people from biblical times until now, some voluntary and some involuntary. Concern was expressed regarding the United States government's current targeting of selected immigrant groups. Members of the committee also wish to urge the United Church of Christ to provide additional educational materials to help congregations grapple with the complexities of immigration reform. Again, Committee 13 urges your approval.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Felix Villanueva, your host conference minister. And a conference where we live with the immigration reality every day. I want to ask you to support this resolution. We can go into detail about the many reasons why this is the right thing to do. I just want to tell you that we don't need any more fences. There are already 3 fences on our border. One of them, which is electrified, although legally it does not exist. At this point, the illegal immigration is basically zero. And we are going to spend billions of dollars to secure something that is already secured. Secondly, the immigrants who live in this conference are productive members of our society who pay taxes and don't get any of the benefits. And we, the citizens of this nation, reap the benefit of the work that they do, because our benefits are paid by those immigrants. So I will ask you to vote in favor of this resolution. Thank you very much.
Microphone number 6.
Stewart, delegate from the Illinois Conference.
And I'm Shirley Fleming, a delegate from the Illinois Conference.
And we propose this amendment to the main resolution.
Could I stop you for just a moment? Our standing rules require that we allow 2 folks to speak in favor and 2 folks to speak against before we entertain motions to amend the action. And so we will hear from another pro speaker and we'll see if there are con speakers. If not, then we will allow your amendment. Microphone number 1.
Art Cribbs, Southern California Nevada Conference, Ecumenical Council, representing the pension boards. I stand in support of this resolution. I also want to say thank you to Norman Jackson for providing the previous resolution that was approved by this body. Just as the previous speaker, my conference minister said, the borders that separate Mexico and the United States are indigenous lands. The people who live in those lands have had their families divided, their lands devastated, their dreams deterred. This comprehensive immigration reform resolution brings to all of our consciousness the continuing travesty occurring against peoples of this continent who are not immigrants, but are long-term residents whose lives have been devastated by policies and legislation by the United States government. It is important for us to remember that what is happening today further terrorizes people who are residents in the United States, who live in fear, who are not given the safety and sanctuary that is promised to those who come here as inscribed in the Statue of Liberty. We are violating our own ideology. We are violating our own faith values. This resolution is an attempt to remind us again to engage in civic action, to inform our legislators who are ignorant about the devastating impact current policy has on persons who are already resident here, who are contributors to our society, who are being criminalized and unfairly deported and detained, including children whose families are divided. This resolution acts within the tradition of the United Church of Christ to speak for those who are unable to speak for themselves, for those who are rendered invisible and continue to live with terror simply because of who they are and their family representation.
Are there any speakers at red microphones? Microphone number 6.
Yes, once again, I am David Stewart, delegate from the Illinois Conference.
I am Shirley Fleming, delegate from the Illinois Conference.
And we would like to propose this amendment to the Resolution 13, beginning on line 1434, following the word violence, semicolon, we would amend to state 7 in parens. Ensure that newly documented immigrants have the opportunity to enroll for health insurance coverage under the Affordable Care Act, semicolon, and 8, and then continuing, ending of.
And the reason that we are asking for this amendment, because we are aware that there are a number of individuals who
If you hold on for just a moment, we'll give you an opportunity to speak at it at a green microphone. Right now, we need a second to the motion. All right, Now, I fibbed a little bit. You now may speak to it.
Okay, the reason that we are asking for this amendment is because there are a number of individuals who do not have access to health care insurance in the country because of the way that we've structured our public policy. And what ends up happening to many of these individuals is they attempt to repatriate them to their countries once an institution decides that they can no longer care for them or have charity care. And often some of the countries that they're being repatriated to do not have the resources to care for them. And so a more compassionate way for us to do this is to give them the opportunity to participate in the current healthcare system so that they can receive quality care here in the place where they work, live with their families.
Thank you. We will now entertain discussion on the amendment to add number 7 on line 1434, the language, ensure that newly documented immigrants have the opportunity to enroll for health insurance coverage under the Affordable Care Act, and then make the previous number 7 now a number 8. Microphone 1. No? Oh, not speaking to the amendment. Microphone 5.
Madam Moderator, Burt Marshall from the Massachusetts Conference. I would like to suggest, in the interest of courtesy and consistency, to point out that the waving of hands is the same as applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Duly noted. Now, are there those who wish to speak either to or against the amendment? Are we ready to vote on the amendment? This vote will insert the language in line 1434, 7, ensure that newly documented immigrants have the opportunity to enroll for health insurance coverage under the Affordable Care Act, and 8, ending of, and then continuing with the rest of the resolution as written. Those in favor of adding this amendment will be voting 1. Those opposed to the amendment, voting 2. Those abstaining from this vote, push 3. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. Voting is closed with 787 votes received. The amendment is adopted. We now return to discussion on the main motion. Microphone 1.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
My name is Sylvia Farrell Jones. My home conference is Massachusetts. I'm here as a member of the Executive Council. In my day job, I am President and CEO of YWCA Boston. I wanted to share with all of you that on June 5th, just a few weeks ago, representatives of YWCAs from across the nation spent a day on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., advocating for comprehensive immigration reform. We met with the staffs of senators and representatives from all over the country, and we are very much in favor of immigration reform in a comprehensive fashion as reflected in this resolution. I'd like to encourage all of us to vote in favor of the resolution, and even more importantly, when we get back home, to email, call, or write our representatives in the House to tell them that we are in favor of immigration reform. The Senate has acted, and this will be a difficult fight in the House, and they need to hear from us. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Sheila Anger, South Central Conference. Of course we need in this country immigration reform. Of course it makes sense to have 11 million tax-paying people. Of course it makes sense to bring in cultures of different modes of thinking and different ways of living to this country. That is what America is. Immigration reform and the success of immigration reform is a reaffirmation of what America stands for. Thank you.
Once again, I'm not seeing folks lining up at red microphones. If you want to speak against this motion, please make your way to a red microphone. Microphone 1.
Hello, my name is Samuel Conde, and I am representing the Florida delegation. I am a member of the Latino community, and I would like to share that I work with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers to work for rights for migrant workers, and that this resolution is very important because these people live in a reality that is very sad and very, very harming to their health. I have been to Immokalee and I have seen the lives that these people live. They live in multiple families in one trailer that is half the size of a normal trailer with 10 people inside these homes. And they make barely enough living. And then the people who own these homes make them pay all of their living to live in these homes. So you have to realize that this is an issue that personally affects thousands of people and millions of people across America. So when you are voting on this issue, keep this in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Dennis Alger, Delegate, Central Pacific Conference and member of Committee 13. I appreciate, as a committee member, the addition of that amendment. It reminds me that my wife and I are privileged to be godparents of a 3-year-old Hispanic girl. And we are aware, as we were reminded by speakers on Saturday, of the fear in which many of our neighbors live. We're also reminded to be mindful, to see these individuals. It intrigues me that many years ago, the Chinese laborers came into this country. Nobody liked them, but we learned to love the food. Look how popular Mexican restaurants are, and yet we don't want to see them. We don't have a conscience about how those individuals are treated in our society. I encourage you to vote in the positive.
I would like to suggest that this will be our last speaker unless we see someone show up at a red microphone. Microphone 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Linda Jaramillo. I'm Executive Minister for Justice and Witness Ministries. First, I commend the committee's work and certainly, obviously, support the resolution and appeal to all of you, the General Synod, to really go home and think about and discern and prayerfully accept your responsibility to be an immigrant welcoming community. Secondly, I would appeal to you that you more than deliver this resolution to your Congress or call someone. I suggest you are vigilant and deliver it every day if you have to. Secondly, that we really must go to our state houses, our city councils, and our school boards as well, because there is that kind of separation happening in those kind of places. So my appeal to you is do more than just pass this resolution. Immigration reform, we're not there yet, and certainly there will be more work to do even if the House does pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now ready to vote. The question before the House is the report and the recommendation of Committee 13 to approve the resolution supporting compassionate, comprehensive immigration reform and the protection of the human rights of immigrants as amended. If you want to vote in favor of the motion, you will vote 1, against 2, to abstain, please push 3. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. Voting is closed with 801 votes counted. The motion is approved. Thank you so much, Barbara. Over there in the Executive Council table, James, are you ready? All right, we're going to have just a 5-minute break. Before we go into break, let me tell you what's coming up. When we come back, we will deal with Committee number 9 to recognize the need for compassionate care and healing to our veterans. Then we will deal with Committee number 14, an anticipated resolution regarding the United Church of Canada. Following that, the restructuring of conference boundaries. And if we are still at it at that time, we'll go on to making the UCC church buildings more carbon neutral. We will adjust that as needed, but that's our plan now. With a little entertainment from the floor, let's take a 5-minute recess.
Penso tesoro e acordamos de som de pensamento vem a luz, silêncio do sol e acordamos de
Thank you. We return now to our committee reports. Please take your seats. The next committee to report out will be Committee 9, to recognize the need for compassionate care and healing to our veterans. This is a resolution of witness which will require a 2/3 vote. I call upon Charles Kuturu to present the recommended action from Committee 9.
Thank you, Moderator. My name is Charles Kuturu, representing Pennsylvania Southeast Conference. I bring greetings from my home church, Grace Trinity United Church of Christ, Philadelphia. The text of the recommended action in the printed material on page 8 and continued on 9. The committee delegates have actively and prayerfully participated in the hearing mode and exchanged views regarding spiritual, economical, and social concerns of veterans and their families. Concerns were voiced, suggestions were made, opinions were collected, and reached consensus in the deliberation mode. The committee worked with a great responsibility, together with one accord, to strengthen the resolution to enable us to understand the deep meaning of the words which are replaced or changed in resolution. Now I would like to invite all veterans who are present in the hall today to please stand if you are able, so we may thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Thank you. Please refer to your handout for the changes made by the committee. On behalf of Committee Number 9, I move that the 29th General Synod adopts the resolution on to recognize the need for compassionate care and healing to our veterans, and the committee recommends approval.
What you have before you is a motion to recognize the need for compassionate care and healing to our veterans. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I would like to cede my time to Mr. Sam Brewer, a Committee 9 member. Is it okay?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Samuel Buer, pastor of Sylvania United Church of Christ of the Ohio delegation. This is a grassroots resolution that comes to you from your sister churches in Ohio. We bring you this resolution because many of our veterans are in need of hope and healing that we followers of Christ have to offer. In our local churches, we have many needs here. We have become increasingly aware that in the recent wars in which our military has been called to service, that many of our young men and women returning from military service have been profoundly impacted by the moral injury of war. And many are suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Here are some numbers that were shared with our committee. In 2012, more active duty military personnel died by suicide than in military conflict. Active duty suicides happened on the average of more than one per day. In 2012, this is the veterans' number, inactive. They died at the rate of 22 per day by suicide. Our National Guard and Reserve veterans are at especially high risk because of the limited resources of their respective states and because they do not necessarily qualify for benefits from the Veterans Administration. And of those veterans that attended church, our churches, before being called into active duty service, upon return home, 85% no longer attend church. 85%. Facts and figures are one thing, but here's two stories. The first is from a veteran of the Iraq War. His job was to lob mortars into a neighborhood in Iraq. At one point in the day, he refused those orders to continue to lob mortars. He told his commanding officer that he had killed enough civilians that day. Today, the only way he knows to deal with that memory is through his drug addiction. Oh, and by the way, he no longer attends church. An Afghan veteran. After the largest air assault since Vietnam, he spent 13 hours searching for body parts of members of his own unit. He currently is a police officer, local police officer. If he reaches out for help and is diagnosed as having a mental disorder, he loses his job. And by the way, he no longer attends church. As followers of Christ, the one who is willing to leave the 99 to find the one lost, I think it behooves us to leave the 15 to find the 85 lost.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Microphone 2.
I'm Bryn Smallwood Garcia. I'm the senior pastor at the Congregational Church of Brookfield. I'm a delegate from the Connecticut delegation. I would like to speak in favor of this motion with the caveat that I did speak in hearing about the difficulty, the risk that I see with this motion, which is what I would call this year's Who Loves Puppies resolution. We are all in favor of helping our veterans, and especially as we hear this tragic news. But as a local church pastor, I just wanted to say that I have first responders to Sandy Hook in my congregation, and they are also suffering from PTSD. And our gratitude goes to all of you who've been praying for our community, and especially to your giving to OCWM, which made possible the mobilization of our regional ministers and our national church to give us resources to know how to deal with this. I just want to encourage you in your local churches to not just file this resolution, which I have every confidence we will pass, but to go to websites like careforthetroops.org. There are simple steps that you can do in your church, just like you have those little booklets about how to help a grieving family. Do not be overwhelmed by this. This is something that we can do in the Church of Jesus Christ, which is to offer compassion and listening and care for those who come to us, who come through our doors. Even if their terrible, terrible stuff happens to them, we have the strength that Jesus Christ gives us to bear their pain. And I just want to close with a moment of saying that we had a really profound moment when a refugee who survived World War II reached out to one of our first responders and veterans during coffee hour. And they pulled aside and told one of those stories. So thank you.
Microphone number 1.
My name is Sherry Prestiman. I'm representing the Executive Council, and I currently serve at Back Bay Mission in Biloxi, which in the last year and a half has launched a number of ministries to homeless veterans and those who are nearly homeless. I would stand in support, certainly, of this resolution, and just want to also bring to your awareness that not only are many of our veterans not in our churches, but they are also not in homes. Across this nation, we have approximately, tonight, 67,000 veterans who are on the streets. So I commend the resolution, and I plead with all of you not just to seek to bring veterans into your churches, but to seek to bring them into safety and into homes and into a full welcome back to be among us.
There is someone at microphone number 6. Are there any who want to speak against the amendment? The resolution. Are there any who want to speak against the resolution? Microphone number 6.
Thank you.
William Field, Central Atlantic Conference. I'd like to offer an amendment. I think it's a friendly amendment. If you read line 1315, there's a word that does not belong in there, I believe. It says, and I'm going to read that line just by itself, veterans administrations, chaplains, and in our local congregations to express. The word in does not belong there. I would like an amendment to strike the word in.
We'll accept the amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
My name is Jennifer Spears. I'm from the Southeast Conference. I am a Cold War and Vietnam era veteran. I'm the child and the in-law of World War II veterans. I am completely in favor of this amendment. I was a member of the committee, and I work with a man who is an Iraq War veteran. I saw him leave my place of business as a young boy. When he came home, he was a grown man. He had what I call the look of eagles in his eyes. He was very different. He never went to church before he left, but when he came back, he has been, to pardon the phrase, a religious churchgoer. I, on the other hand, when I got out of the military, had no one extend a hand of welcome to me. Not my own family, not the church, not the business community. I think if the UCC as a whole takes this stand, we will benefit greatly by trying to bring those 85% back into the fold. Thank you.
Microphone number 1.
Yes, my name is Jim Clausing, the Ohio Conference, and a father of an Iraq War veteran. I rise in favor of this resolution, obviously. As the previous speaker said, though, if all we do is vote for this resolution, we're not accomplishing anything. We need to take this home. We need to reach out to the veterans in our local communities. I am very much in favor of the additional strengthening that we did of this resolution. I was part of the committee. The resources that I hope will be developed out of this would have been very helpful when my son returned from his first tour in Iraq. And the first 4th of July, I had to see him hit the floor when the fireworks went off. And I didn't know what to do. So I strongly urge adoption of this resolution. Thank you.
We have time for one more speaker. Microphone number 2.
Jamita Bell, Southern Conference, Associate Pastor in Maple Temple, a veteran service officer. And I would like to encourage, to ask, to plead that as the gentleman before me spoke, that we don't just vote, but we act. That we take it upon ourselves to proudly serve those who have proudly served. Daily, I have veterans come into my office who have no care, as the other lady said, who have no homes, but they had to go and leave their countries, their homes, and their families so that we may have the freedoms that we now have. So as we, as a body, go forth to help those who have helped us wake up on a daily basis with the freedoms simply to be, to live, and to act where others cannot. Let us give thanks by doing what no others may consider to do. I give thanks to the committee, to those who proposed this, and I thank you all in advance as a body for making this a reality.
We are now ready to vote on the resolution from committee number 9 to recognize the need for compassionate care and healing to our veterans as amended. Vote 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstentions. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. The resolution is adopted with 776 votes. We now move to Committee 14, a resolution on ecumenical relationship between the United Church of Christ and the United Church of Canada. This is a resolution of witness which will require a 2/3 vote. I call on Brittany Badger to present the recommended action for this committee.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning. In the spirit of relationship, I feel like I want to say Ianiwashte, buenos dias, guten morgen, and aloha. My name is Brittany Badger, and I come from South Dakota and serve as the chair for Committee 14. The recommended actions of the assigned resolution on an ecumenical relationship between the United Church of Christ and the United Church of Canada can be found in the original resolution document on page 3, lines 114 through 123. I am very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with all who contributed to the work accomplished in Committee 14. Before I begin, I would like to say a special thank you to all the delegates and visitors who attended. In addition, a big thank you to Doyle Luckenbaugh, the Executive Council Liaison, and to Karen Georgia Thompson and her guest, Michael Blair, Executive Minister and Ecumenical Officer from the United Church of Canada. And last but not least, thank you to the committee process team for all of their support throughout the committee process. The work of the committee was uniquely tied together with a community building activity where we introduced ourselves to others with the goal of finding one other person with something we have in common. The moral of our activity being that in life it can be easier sometimes to find the differences we have in those we have just met. However, the importance in building our community was to recognize and build on the similarities we share with those in our committee. Similarities are what brought our committee together, and through our discussions, questions, and personal experiences of the United Church of Canada, I can quote a delegate by saying, "It was like a home away from home." On behalf of Committee 14, I move that the 29th General Synod adopts the resolution on ecumenical relationship between the United Church of Christ and the United Church of Canada and recommends approval as presented.
What is before the delegates is, as a main motion and recommended action of this committee, is that we vote in approval of the resolution. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I wish to simply express approval of this recommendation as it confirms our ecumenical values and broadens the scope of our partnership. As previously stated, it can be a relationship where we have a home away from home. Thank you.
Are you ready for the vote? Discussion. I see no one at the microphones. Microphone number 1.
Ronald Fryer Nicholas, Florida delegation. I'm pastor of Pilgrims United Church of Christ in Fruitland Park, Florida. And since its organization in 1990 as a new church start, Pilgrims has had a relationship with the United Church of Canada as being its unofficial southern outlet and home away from home for Canadians who dare that far south. And it has been our joy over the years to welcome Canadian clergy, Canadian lay folk, and other folks who have found us into our congregation when they have come and visited with us for some time during each winter. It has increased our joy, it has increased our world perspective, and has been a wonderful witness to the work that we can do. So I heartily support this and encourage us to move forward at all deliberate speed with improving our relationships with the United Church of Canada.
Microphone number 2.
Bill Twing from Penn West Conference. I've been a United Church minister for about 40 years. The first 11 of those years, I was a United Church of Canada minister, and I'm ordained in the United Church of Canada and pensioned off by the United Church of Canada, as I am in the United Church of Christ. Having started my ministry there, including going to theological schools there for a while, I can tell you that there is a natural relationship between those two churches. We think alike, and we value the same things, and it's a no-brainer pretty much. In addition to that, you know, we are neighbors right across the border, and they're our major trading partner. This is something which I'm amazed that we haven't ever done it before, as I am amazed we've never done the veterans thing before. So I speak very strongly in favor of, officially recognizing this relationship.
Microphone number 1.
My name is Mike Denton. I'm a delegate for Justice and Witness Ministries. I'm also the conference minister for the Pacific Northwest Conference. Thank you. Which is Washington State, Northern Idaho, and Alaska. And so as that conference, we share more of a border with Canada than any other conference. I'm very excited about this resolution. In some ways, it might seem like something that's a simple moving forward of one relationship in one arena, but for us, it's a different kind of reality. For some of our churches, there are an equal number of United Church of Canada churches as there are United Church of Christ churches. And one of our churches in particular, the next closest United Church of Christ church, is an hour and a half away, and there are 4 United Church of Canada churches within about 45 minutes of that congregation. Also, as the northern border continues to be increasingly militarized, and there are now drones flying over Spokane, Washington that are patrolling the border, as there are more border issues that are coming up both environmentally as well as around different social justice issues, as there is already the great and work that folks within the United Church of Canada has done in coalition with the Coast Salish tribes that are along the Salish Sea, also known as Puget Sound. There's just lots of exciting opportunities. Add to that the Trans-Pacific trade agreement that's just been put together, and there's lots of things and ways in which we very naturally are work together around issues of morals and ethics. So again, very excited about this resolution. For us, it means some very real ways in which some of our communication and work together can progress. Thank you.
Microphone number 2.
My name is Jake Joseph from Justice and Witness Ministries. Je m'appelle Jake Joseph de Justice et Witness Ministries de l'Église unie des États-Unis. And I'm very happy to be here in support of this resolution. Je suis très content d'être ici pour continuer les liens entre l'Église unie de Christ aux États-Unis et l'Église unie du Canada. So please support this to continue in our ecumenical history and mission. Et je suis ici pour l'histoire des États-Unis, l'Église du Christ ici, et ses liens liés avec notre histoire et mission. Merci. Thank you.
Microphone number 2.
Paul Clay, Southern California, Nevada Conference. A few years ago, I visited a United Church of Canada, pulled a book off the shelf that said, History of the UCC, and I was surprised what was in it. It had different names, different dates, different merging bodies, but exactly the same story.
Microphone number 1.
My name is Hyo Jung Kim. I represent the Executive Council, and I'm very excited about this resolution, and I speak out in support for it. The United Church of Canada and the United Church of Christ do a number of wonderful things with our partner churches around the world. It's happening on the ground. The missionaries on the ground in the local churches and other settings work together, are in fellowship, they love and support each other, and we're doing it already. We're being church together, and I urge you to vote in support for this resolution.
You ready for the vote? Remember, 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstentions. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted with 782 votes. We are now moving to committee number 11, the restructuring of conference boundaries. This is a resolution of witness and requires a 2/3 vote. I call upon Darrell Cruz to present the recommended action from committee number 11.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
I'm sorry. This is a prudential resolution and requires a majority vote. My error.
Good morning. My name is Darrell Cruz. I served as the chairperson for committee number 11, restructuring of conference boundaries. I am a delegate from the Pennsylvania Southeast Conference, from which I bring greetings. Thank you. And I am the pastor of St. John's United Church of Christ in Reading, Pennsylvania. Through our committee's conversation, it became clear to us that there's an opportunity to revise the language in such a way that the intent of the original resolution from the Southwest Conference would be clarified. That new language is before you in the packet on page 10. The committee engaged in meaningful dialogue that considered the overarching concerns of the church in every setting. With that intent, and with the understanding that the church is faced with challenging decisions ahead, the committee agreed that the conversations between the 38 conferences and their covenant partners is a necessary one to ensure the sustainability and viability of our church. The committee felt strongly that transparency and careful thought be deliberate throughout this proposed process. It was then decided that the Collegium of Officers should be working collaboratively and pastorally with our conferences during this period of transition and revitalization. So on behalf of Committee 11, I move that the 29th General Synod adopt the resolution on restructuring of conference boundaries and recommends approval.
The motion before the Synod is approval of the prudential resolution restructuring of conference boundaries. Would the committee like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'll be brief. Committee 11 was curious and committed to the United Church of Christ and its covenant bodies, and it engaged in honest and open dialogue on the possibilities of conference boundaries and structure. The committee was of one accord that this resolution be adopted and approved. It was in agreement with the overall intent of the resolution, with the exception to some of the wording. The committee believed that this conversation is necessary moving forward in the life of the church. Also, the issue of transparency was discussed and carefully considered in adopting the new language to set at ease the minds and hearts of all considering approving this resolution today. The committee unanimously supports this resolution and asks that you vote in its favor. Thank you.
Any discussion? Microphone number 2.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Jeff Brace, Justice and Witness Ministries. I'm also the moderator for the Penn Northeast Conference. I rise in support of this resolution. For the past 3 years, the Penn Northeast Conference has been in prayerful discussion to further partnership and collaboration with the Pennsylvania Southeast Conference. The relationship has been fruitful with programming planned jointly to support ordained clergy education, youth, and other programs. We quickly discovered, however, the obstacles that will require assistance from outside our bodies. Truthfully, I worry that we are at a critical point in the life, purpose, and function of the middle judicatories. We need a denominational conversation and plan. I worry that if we don't act now, 10 years from today, the majority of our middle judicatories will be non-functional, leaving the critical covenant with local community of faith and our beloved UCC in a bad place. We have an obligation to ensure the continuation of our biblical values, continuing testimony, extravagant welcome, and transforming lives. We need healthy and sustainable, vibrant middle judicatories to accomplish that. As conference moderator, I look forward to the conversations that will happen as a result of this resolution. The future of our church and our values, the continuation of both, depend on it.
Microphone number 4.
My name is Dan Furman. I am from the Michigan Conference. I rise to speak against this resolution, partially because of a word and partially because of the concept. The word I disagree with is on line 1369 of the revised resolution packet on page 10. Quote, engage in a prayerful process of discernment in order to assess what they may need to assure a sustainable future, unquote. I disapprove of the word sustainable. I am tired of the defeatist attitude of the dwindling attendance and giving in the church when there are increasing numbers of people to serve outside the church and there is plenty of money in our communities. I don't want a sustainable future. I want a thriving future. I want a passionate future. My association, the United Northern Association of the Michigan Conference, has 15 churches. We used to have 16, but recently Portage Lake United Church of Christ in Houghton in the Upper Peninsula, a full 8-hour drive away from the other churches just in my own association, decided to join our sisters and brothers in the Wisconsin Conference so that they could have a more realistic community. We in the Michigan Conference do not need to give up the Upper Peninsula just to have them have a more realistic community. Instead, we can find creative ways to be the thriving and sustain the thriving body of Christ and be bold. Thank you.
Microphone number 1.
My name is George Peters. I'm a delegate from the Rhode Island Conference. I am a member of Committee 11, and I was the principal author of the substitute motion. The concern was to be supportive of our brothers and sisters from the Southwest Conference. The committee is totally in agreement with their intention and objective. We believe that there needs to be a conversation among the covenant partners involved. And one of my reasons for wanting to provide a substitute motion was to reduce the anxiety level in the church among those who might have misread what was not intended by the original resolution, which is that this is to be a conversation among mutual covenant partners, and that no final decision about boundaries would be done without a mutual decision among those covenant partners. Friends, no matter what words may be in the resolution, this conversation needs to go forward, and it needs to involve all of us. So just remember that the primary purpose of this enabling action is to invite conversation, to encourage people to engage in it, and for all of us to remember that we are one church, and that the covenant partners in this one church need to act in ways that are prayerful, and that any decisions will be mutual. Thank you.
I see someone at microphone 6. Do we have anyone else to go to a red microphone? I call on microphone 6.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Gall from the Southern Conference. And I think being part of that committee, I think the intent was to use a more positive outlook. And so I would make a motion to amend the word sustainability to the word thriving.
There needs to be a second. Do you want to speak to the motion?
Just as I have already said, I think the intent of the committee was that it be a very positive discussion and positive outlook. And I think that word better describes what the intent was.
Will you accept a friendly amendment?
May I call upon the ECL, the Executive Council Liaison, to speak to the matter?
I wonder if the person making this amendment, as opposed to substituting the word sustainable, might just add the word thriving.
Yes, that's fine. Sustainable and thriving is okay.
We will accept that amendment. Thank you. We'll continue with microphone number 2.
I'm John Dorihauer, Conference Minister for the United Church of Christ in the Southwest. It was the Southwest Conference that brought the original motion. I rise to the microphone both to support the motion and to signal our clear support for the substitute, which we believe to be in full compliance with our original intent.
Microphone number 6.
Galen Russell, Penn Central Conference. We had some wonderful discussion about this particular resolution, and it is in full compliance with the Constitution as we already have it. So I'm wondering if it might make good sense for us to include the words on line 1379 to say will be transmitted to the 30th General Synod and future General Synods, if necessary, for future deliberation and approval as necessary. So we don't necessarily have to entertain a motion to restructure boundaries all over again.
Is there a second? Was there a second? I couldn't hear. Okay, thank you. Do you accept?
We already discussed this in committee and decided against that. So no, we will not accept.
Would you like to speak to your amendment?
I guess to speak to it would be to say simply that our Constitution does allow for conferences to be engaging in conversations with one another, and to recognize that 10 years from now there may be a similar situation where conferences may end up wanting to present to General Synod a merger of sorts, a sharing of resources, an affirmation of reconfiguring conference boundaries. And that whole understanding can be shared again because our Constitution has already indicated that this happens before General Synod and needs to come to General Synod for approval. So my thought was not to just limit it to the 30th General Synod, but rather to indicate that this is not something that's bound by those 2 years, but rather it can be extended into following the Constitution as is printed for us.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Discussion on the amendment. Microphone number 2.
My name is Ed Olympia, representing the South Dakota Conference. I grew up in the Northern Plains Conference, and for the last 20 years, the Northern Plains Conference and the South Dakota Conference have been discussing ways they can work together. They were looking at one point over the last couple of years of having one common conference minister, and it looked like it didn't work out. But so to say that they would come to any kind of agreements in the next 2 years after 20 years of discussion is not going to be possible, I would think. Well, the spirit's always possible, but it's probably not. So I would say that having an opportunity beyond the next General Synod to have them come in, work the conference boundaries and such would be acceptable.
Microphone number 4.
David Stewart, Illinois Conference. I believe I would agree with the proposer of the amendment that discussions around conference boundaries probably don't need constitutionally the blessings of General Synod to go forth. However, my reading of the proposal is that there is somewhat of a sense of urgency that something be done reasonably soon. So, so then by passing this, the main amendment, the main proposal, the Synod is directing that this study happen over the next 2 years so that something can tangibly be presented to Synod 30. I also would agree in my interpretation of the Constitution that if in a few years down the road, conference has decided, hey, we want to merge, that action would have to come before the Synod, but the discussion doesn't have to be mandated by the Synod. This action is to mandate discussion now because of the urgency and to request a report for action within 2 years. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Microphone number 3.
My name is Bertrus Wood. I'm a delegate from the Ohio Conference, and I served on Committee 11. And we discussed this, but I'm rising to speak against the amendment, not the resolution itself. We discussed the fact that there are conversations going on that have begun already, and that we want to be sure, as the gentleman before me said, that something is done in a timely fashion and not have it be postponed. We want things to be somewhat in conversation so there can be coordination on the direction we go. And I firmly believe that if there is a need for continuing conversation or new considerations altogether, that the General Synod, the subsequent General Synods, will have no problem approaching that. We have restructured many times when the need has arisen. And so I'm speaking against the amendment, and largely because the committee itself was opposed to it for the reasons that we need something looked at now, not postponing it at all. Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak for this amendment? Are you ready to vote? This is on the amendment to restructure of conference boundaries such that it would be brought before more than or subsequent General Synods beyond General Synod 30. Are you ready to vote? 1 for yes, 2 against, 3 for abstentions. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. With 797 votes cast, I'm sorry, thank you. 797 votes cast. The amendment is defeated. We will now return to the main motion and discussion. Microphone number 1.
Good morning. My name is Mark Stewart. I'm the conference minister with the Montana Northern Wyoming Conference Association, partnership with the Disciples of Christ. We are a conference of 33 United Church of Christ congregations, 11 Disciples of Christ congregations. And I stand here in appreciation of the general ministries and local church ministries of our denomination that in previous years when I was with the South Dakota Conference facilitated and affirmed our discussions around conference boundaries involving the conferences around the South Dakota Conference. We now in the Montana Northern Wyoming Conference know we are very small, that we're going to have to, in order to be more faithful to our mission, become larger ecumenically or larger geographically. I affirm what's happening now in General Synod that we're expanding the conversation and becoming more fully aware of conferences of this boundary and mission need that we have. Thank you.
Microphone number 5.
Tim Ahrens of the Ohio Conference. I'd like to call the question.
Requires a second. Vote on calling the question. All those in favor? 1. All those opposed? 2. 3 for abstentions. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. With 784 votes cast, we vote in favor. We are. The motion before you is restructuring of conference boundaries as submitted, as amended by, with conference from Committee 11. Again, vote yes, 1, no, 2, abstentions, 3. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. With 793 votes cast, the resolution is adopted. We now move to the elections for the Executive Minister for Local Church Ministries, the Executive Minister for Justice and Witness Ministries, and General Minister and President.
So you turn the page, what do I see? You're here. I'm right there. And that's the only time. Okay.
All right.
I call on Ms. Carol Williams Swope, Chair of the Board of Directors of Local Church Ministries.
Moderator, I move that the Reverend Dr. Jay Bennett Guest be called by election by the General Synod of the United Church of Christ to a full 4-year term as the Executive Minister for Local Church Ministries and an officer of the United Church of Christ.
The question is before the House. Please note that 60% of those voting must vote in the affirmative for call by election. Please enter your vote for calling by election the Reverend Dr. Jay Bennett Guest to a 4-year term as Executive Minister of Local Church Ministries and an officer of the United Church of Christ. To vote yes, press 1. To vote no, press 2. To abstain, press 3. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. The motion is carried, and Ben has been elected. I call upon the Reverend Alice Harper Jones, Chair of the Board of Directors of Justice and Witness Ministries.
Moderator, I move that the Reverend M. Linda Jaramillo be called for election by the General Senate of the United Church of Christ to a 4-year term as Executive Minister of Justice and Witness Ministries and Officer of the United Church of Christ.
The question is before the House. Again, 60% of those voting must vote in the affirmative for call by election. Please enter your vote for calling the Reverend M. Linda Jaramillo to a 4-year term as the Executive Minister of Justice and Witness Ministries and an officer of the United Church of Christ. To vote yes, press 1. To vote no, press 2. To abstain, press 3. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. With 800 votes cast, Linda has been elected. I call on Reverend Penny Lowe's, Chair of the Executive Council.
Madam Moderator, I move that the Reverend Joffrey Black be called by election by the General Synod of the United Church of Christ to a 4-year term as the General Minister and President of the United Church of Christ.
The question is before the House. 60% of those voting must vote in the affirmative for election, call by election. Please enter your vote for calling the Reverend Joffrey Black to a 4-year term as the General Minister and President of the United Church of Christ. To vote yes, press 1. To vote 2. To vote no, press 2. To abstain, press 3. Voting begins now. Fifteen seconds. Five seconds. With 795 votes cast, Joffrey has been elected. I ask Jim Mose and Mark Clark, the other members of the current collegium, to please join us on the stage.
Let us join together in prayer. O Holy One, we come to you in times of endings and beginnings, grateful, so grateful for your presence and companionship in the times in between. At this moment of beginnings, we ask that you pour out your love upon these four friends of yours and ours. In their separateness, in their individuality, save them from the illusion of loneliness, for no one who loves you is ever alone.
Save them from the twin temptations of self-importance and self-blame. In their moments of isolation and doubts, break into their lives afresh with a love that reminds them who they are, your beloved children.
As a collegium of officers, grace them with friendship, with honesty infused with affection, with a sense of humor that enables them to tell the difference between what is solemn and what is serious.
Give them joy and remind them, even and especially in the glimmers of moments, of the hope that is in you, and for the rest of us who have chosen them to lead us. Grant patience and a respect that transcends disagreement.
May we accept their leadership gracefully and graciously, loving them even when they disappoint us. We pray for our beloved church. May it be a faithful instrument of your mission, a mission that brings good news to a world that thirsts to hear it. We pray in the name of the one whose name we, as Christians, claim, the one who tells us who we are, the one who saves us and redeems us, our brother and our friend, Jesus. Amen.
Let's give them a round of applause.
You don't. You're okay. Not at all. No, just me and Mike. Okay, we can go. We take care now to celebrate the ministry of Mr. W. Mark Clark, our Associate General Minister. As our new national structure moves to a collegium of 4 officers of the church, the role of Associate General Minister comes to a conclusion, and a new role, that of Chief Administrative Officer, begins. The former role and the new role have the same incumbent, W. Mark Clark. About this leadership evolution, General Minister and President, the Reverend Black has observed that Mark has been a tremendous colleague as a member of the Collegium of Officers, and we certainly celebrate that he will stay with us in the new role of Chief Administrative Officer. We're very blessed that we will continue our work together in this new moment, responsive to the profound organizational needs to undergird the missional life of the church. Indeed, we are blessed. During his 2-year term as Associate General Minister, Mark has been responsible for the planning of General Synod, worked on the transition to a single board of governance, and has overseen the day-to-day operations of the Office of General Ministries. Mark brings a great set of creative administrative skills to the national setting. With many years of experience leading large human service enterprises, Mark knows well how to manage complex organizations and systems. A lifelong member of the United Church of Christ, Mark has been active at all settings of the church. a member of 5 UCC congregations in 2 conferences. He has served on 4 of those church councils. He is a past moderator of the Southwest Conference and chaired its most recent Conference Minister Search Committee. Mark served on the board of directors of the Office of General Ministries as chair of its Budget and Finance Committee, and as a representative to the Executive Council 2005 through 2009. He chaired the Executive Council's Committee of Reference for General Synod 2009. Mark and his wife Stacy K. Parrish Clark relocated to Cleveland to take up the position of Associate General Minister after his election at General Synod 28 in 2011. And now, recognizing the leadership and organizational insight of W. Mark Clark as his tenure as Associate General Minister draws to a close, the United Church of Christ national offices have appointed Mark to continue his work in a new role as the UCC's Chief Administrative Officer. Mark will step into the new position at the conclusion of Tuesday afternoon's plenary. His love for the UCC and his calling and commissioning to this ministry will continue to benefit the whole church in new and important ways. Part of the tradition of the United Church of Christ is that we encourage all of our local churches and conferences to formally and prayerfully bring to a close the authorized ministry of those who serve in leadership positions. I invite Mark, the Collegium of Officers, and Penny Lowe's Executive Council Chair to join us on stage.
Mark, we recognize this as an aloha moment, a bittersweet thank you and farewell to one role, and a warm welcome into a new. We offer our gratitude for all that you have done as Associate General Minister and Officer of the Church to enrich the life and ministry of the United Church of Christ.
I thank all of the settings of the United Church of Christ for the love, kindness, and support shown to me as Associate General Minister. I ask for forgiveness for the mistakes I have made. I'm grateful for the ways my leadership has been accepted. And as I make my transition into this new role, I carry with me all that I have learned.
Mark, we receive your thankfulness and for your forgiveness, and accept that you now take your leave as Associate General Minister and Officer of the Church. We express our gratitude for your time in serving the United Church of Christ in this role. We ask your forgiveness for our mistakes. Your influence on our faith and faithfulness will continue in our lives as you continue in your new role as Chief Administrative Officer.
I forgive you and accept your gratitude, trusting that our time together in this change is pleasing to God.
And now, do you, the representatives of the many settings of the United Church of Christ, release Mark, who has faithfully served as Associate General Minister and Officer of the United Church of Christ? If so, please answer by saying, "We do, with the help of God."
We do with the help of God. On behalf of the United Church of Christ, I witness to the words spoken, words of thankfulness, forgiveness, and release. We hold each of you in prayer. We pledge our support in the transition to significant service in the church.
Thanks be to God.
let us pray a blessing on this transition mark. May you know the love of God, the wisdom of Christ, the empowerment of the Holy Spirit as you undertake this new role on our behalf. Amen.
I invite the Reverend Rita Nakashima Brock to help us reflect on our time together this morning.
Don't worry, Quinn is not resigned as one of the bitter ends. He'll be up later today, this afternoon. We decided since we have to do 3 of these today, we'd split it up. Do you mind if I move this notebook? No. Okay. My thing is going to fall off otherwise. Thank you. This past October, I had just finished and was about to publish a manuscript on a book called Soul Repair, Recovery from Moral Injury After War. And I'd also begun in June directing the Soul Repair Center at Bright Divinity School, which is dedicated to research and public education about moral injury, especially in veterans of war. I took on this work because I believe religious communities know better than any other social institution in our country the anguish and struggle of conscience when we violate our core moral values and face into that self-recognition moment. So a Tibetan Buddhist seminarian I had worked with named Susie was assisting a Buddhist teacher who led a group of people, various groups, in San Quentin State Prison. And Susie and her teacher, Jacques, had just received permission to form a special group for veterans, the first veteran-only group ever created in the prison. And Susie asked if I would come to their first meeting in October and tell them about my work on moral injury. So at the prison gates, Susie, Jacques, and I, wearing my clergy collar, met a retired Marine colonel who works with vets in prison. We entered the prison and found the room of 20 men in their prison blues, happy to be meeting with people from outside. All but one of them was from the Vietnam era of war. After I met them all, I explained how the morally anguishing conditions of war, killing, failing to save close friends, violating the rules of engagement, or feeling betrayed by the authorities of your own country, can evoke experiences of guilt, rage, profound grief, and shame, and can leave a veteran feeling worthless and alone, sure no one can understand, and many wanting to die, 22 a day who take their own lives. The men asked profound, probing questions, but the colonel was skeptical. He thought moral injury sounded like excuse-making for bad behavior, and people shouldn't have to feel guilty for war service because their country asked them to do it. But others in the group began to tell stories of what happened to them in war, stories they had never told anyone before. One man, his nicknamed Money, said he came home from Vietnam feeling okay. He said, I didn't have any of that PTSD stuff or anything. He said, I thought I was fine. He said, but then, of course, I wound up in prison. He said, and lately, he said, I've been having this bad dream. He said, it isn't really a nightmare. It doesn't wake me up, but it's a bad dream. And when I wake up, I have this image of a kid standing there staring at me who has a huge hole in his forehead. And I said, well, Money, what do you think is behind that dream? And he said, well, you know, one time when we were in Nam, we had this village, we were told there were Viet Cong hiding in this village, and our commander said to us, go in there and shoot everything that moves. He said, so we went in and shooting, and he said, and there was this long building with windows. We were told they were hiding in there and to shoot up that building, so we shot up that building. He said, and then when we went in there and we opened the door and went into the building, he said it was a school. It was just little kids and women, and we had killed them all. I said, do you think that might be related to your dream? He said, maybe so. Maybe I need to think about this moral injury thing. I think it's bothering me. And several others told similar stories like that, of stories they hadn't thought about in years, but now it was beginning to sink in that maybe this was something they'd been carrying and bothering them. So when our time was up, the men invited me to come back anytime, and we parted with a prayer. But I was haunted after those conversations about the things they told me. And when I went back just before Christmas with Susie, Jacques, and the Colonel, the group had been meeting weekly. And I asked them, well, did what I tell you about moral injury help you at all? And they said, that's all we've been talking about since October. It's been so helpful. Some of us really didn't understand why we were so bad, and we were just feeling terrible about ourselves. That we begin to understand why we've done some of the terrible things we've done and been so alienated and harmful to others. So it was just really, really helpful to us. And we were going around the circle, and it was the Colonel's turn to speak. And he looked directly at me, and he said, I owe you an apology. The last time you were here, I was rude to you, and I dismissed what you said, and I didn't really believe it. But I owe you an apology, because I've been thinking about what you said. And I've been hearing what it's done for the men in this group. And I've been talking to a VA doctor who works with vets in prisons, and he's saying it's the most helpful thing he's learned. And when he talks to the veterans about all kinds of health issues, he said, not only that, but it's helped me think about my own experience in Vietnam differently. So I want to apologize to you for my behavior. So when it became my turn in the circle to speak, I said, I want to thank you all for what I learned from that first conversation when I was just beginning this work. But more than that, I want to thank you for how it's made me think about my own life. Because I grew up in a military family. And my father, who was an NCO, a sergeant, was a prisoner of war in World War II. And he received electroshock therapy at Walter Reed when he came home, and I don't think he had a lot of memories about World War II. But he was a vegetable for about a year, and then when he recovered, he re-enlisted and went to Japan with the occupation army and met me and my mother and married my mother and brought me to the United States when I was 6. And I grew up in a military family. When I was 16, he was a medic. He was sent to Vietnam to be the head of an aid station. And after his second tour in Vietnam, I was just going off to college. The father that had been my friend, a good father, someone I was deeply close to all those years, the father who came home from Vietnam was someone else. He was cold, he was controlling, we had huge fights, I was really angry at him, and I decided I was never going to live at home again. And for 8 years, we lived this estranged relationship of father and daughter, and then he died. And so for all those years, I had been angry at my father for the way he had treated me and the person he was when he came home from Vietnam. And I'd never lived at home again after that. So I thought about that, and I started talking to a cousin that had been close to my father, and she told me what had happened to him in Vietnam, and I suddenly understood. He had profound moral injury. And I was so sorry I hadn't understood what that was. I was so sorry I hadn't tried to talk to him about his experience. I was so sorry I hadn't tried to understand what it really, I hadn't even thought about what might have happened to him in war that had made him like he was, made him not the father I knew, not the father I loved and grew up with. And I said to them, and I said, talking to you and then thinking about my father changed my relationship to my own father. I said, I realized all these years I had missed him deeply. And I wondered if in those 8 years, he had missed me. And I said, you know, lots of churches at Christmas time, they let you buy a flower, you know, a poinsettia to decorate the sanctuary, and you get to dedicate a flower to somebody important to you. I said, all these years of my life, I have bought a lot of pots of flowers. I have bought them for my mother. I have bought them for my grandparents. I have bought them for friends that had died that I was close to. I had never bought a flower for my father. I said, this Christmas, I only bought one flower, and it was a flower for my father. There are 23 million veterans in the U.S. When we declare a war over and bring the troops home, the war comes home to our families and communities. Those we love who return from war will never be the same. Compassionate care for veterans means offering friendship, lifelong friendship, and time to listen to the terrible, anguishing truth about what war does to ordinary good people who are sent to fight in our name. If we can receive their stories with gratitude and honesty and explore our own relationship to war, we will find the truth in ourselves and be able to repair love ripped asunder by war. That is what you committed to do this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. I call upon the speaker at microphone 5.
Madam Moderator, when I arrived, I am Linda Bigler from Central Pacific Conference, member of Local Church Ministries and the UCC Disabilities Ministries Board. I came here with one comment, but I now have two. My first is that I was not able to read the screens to participate in the ceremony just prior to our theological reflection. I would ask if there are other brothers and sisters here who could also not read the screen due to visual impairment, if you would stand in solidarity with me as you are able, so that maybe we could see that I am not the only one. I also would like to point out that I was here before the theological reflection and was ignored. Brothers and sisters, welcome to the life of a person with disabilities who is ignored and treated as invisible on a daily basis. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
My apologies, I did not see the sign. I call upon our associate minister to bring us some announcements.
Yes, I'm back.
Microphone number 6.
I'm not back.
Reverend Patrick Morris from Pennsylvania Southeast Conference. I come to you today not as a delegate, but as a member of the Federation of Fire Chaplains. Earlier this morning, we heard the news of tragedy in Arizona
and we missed an opportunity to truly be church together. And with your permission, I would like to pause now with a prayer for the families of those firefighters who have given their lives.
Proceed.
Our gracious and loving God, we lift up to you the 19 firefighters in Arizona who lost their lives, and especially their families. And we thank you for their courage, for their dedication to their calling as volunteers, as paid firefighters all across this nation who ultimately gave their lives. We submit them to your care and tender mercy in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I now call upon our Associate General Minister to bring us some announcements.
I want to start by reminding you that if you are interested in making a speak out at this afternoon's plenary, you need to go over here to the floor parliamentarians table and see Dick Sparrow really quick, because there's sometimes a rush there. Communionware from yesterday's service is available for purchase in the local arrangements committee offices. There's also going to be an additional opportunity at the lunchtime today. A group of folks have scheduled an immigration witness against deportation and detention. It's going to entail about a walk of about a mile. If you're interested in doing that, you need to meet on the promenade deck out in front of the main doors of the convention center at 12:30. Would remind you that we want you to join us on social media using the hashtag UCCGS, that's UCC General Synod 29, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Page 4 in your program book has more details. And once again, I want to thank our 4 platinum sponsors for this year's General Synod: Our Church's Wider Mission, the United Church of Christ Church Building and Loan Fund, the Retirement Housing Foundation, and the United Church of Christ Cornerstone Fund. And now we're going to watch a short video about the Church Building and Loan Fund.
Thank you, Mark.
Maybe we'll try that again later.
I declare the 4th plenary of the 29th General Synod to be complete. The next plenary will begin this afternoon at 2:30. We are in recess.